I want to go to Israel now, and I'd like to bring in Tal Hartouf. She and a friend were the target of a Hamas machete attack back in 2010. Her friend was murdered. Tal was severely wounded, but she did survive. Since then, she's dedicated herself to the fight against terrorism and the calls for peace. It's good to have you with us tonight, Tal. We just saw a report, I know you were watching with us, from the site of the massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri. I mean, that's only one of the atrocities committed by Hamas that day. How wounded is the Israeli nation at this moment?
Well, first of all, Brent, I want to thank you for having me on your show, and also to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of another 9 million Israelis, because you're one of the only TV channels now who are still calling Hamas terrorists and are still covering actually what's happening in Israel, rather than the focus being entirely upon Gaza. How wounded are we? I'll tell you how wounded we are. We are a nation traumatized. And I mean, your nation knows very well. Germany knows very well. Germany is one of our greatest allies today. With that, it's no secret that this is the biggest atrocity poured about on Jewish people since the Holocaust. So we're still shuddering from this. We haven't even located all our where everybody is. We still have 40 people missing. Now, either they're ashes in some field in Israel, or they're also in Gaza. We still have babies, toddlers, children, women and men taken as hostage. We haven't yet identified all the bodies to bury our dead. We are a traumatized nation. And I'll tell you something, Brent, something else. It's like an earthquake, right? And you have the aftershocks. What are the aftershocks? It's like I indicated a little bit earlier. The aftershock is this, that mainstream Western media, yourselves exempt of course, but most Western media are calling Hamas militants, or as the BBC says, they call them organizers. And it's almost like even the United Nations Secretary General today made an absolutely outrageous speech that responded, with our ambassador to the UN responded that he should be fired immediately, he should resign, because he said this, he said, these atrocities don't happen in a vacuum, meaning whatever your politics are, somehow the beheading of babies and the raping of dead corpses is legitimized because of perpetual victimhood from the Palestinian people.
Is that what you felt like?
Let me tell you something else, and then I'll answer anything. But my words are precious. I went through so much, and I've got a lot to say. Okay. I want to tell you this. I was stabbed 13 times with a machete. All right. I watched my Christian friend hacked to death because their executioners thought she was Jewish. I lost my health. I lost my friend. I lost the dignity to provide for myself, sleep, mundane, everything. But I didn't take out my frustrations, pounce on Arabs, tie them up and hack them to death. This is inexcusable. People are setting the bar so low for the Palestinians, and it's inexcusable. And I and 9 million other Israelis are absolutely raging mad about this.
I know you're angry, but I also know that you've spent a part of your life working to bridge the gaps between Israelis and Palestinians. That said, what is your reaction to the fact that no Palestinian leaders have found it in themselves to condemn the Hamas atrocities?
Well, I'm not really surprised, and thank you for reminding your viewers, because I always try to remember to say that it was a Muslim surgeon who saved my life. I probably have more Palestinian friends than most Israelis I know. It's just because I managed to differentiate between evil and good after the attack. I'm not surprised at all that no Palestinian leaders have refuted or condemned this. I mean, for years, this is a sore point, and I've been speaking around the world about this. For years, the European governments and the American government have been funding the Palestinian Authority with billions of euros. And by the way, the attacks on October the 7th weren't just Hamas. There were factions of the PLO who also joined that. And the PLO come under the auspices of Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority. And Mahmoud Abbas takes those European euros, and he is rewarding the people who attacked me and murdered my friend with a monthly salary while they're in prison. So if he's going to, right and give people incentive to murder. We shouldn't be surprised that he's not going to condemn
Well,
it.
I have to say, we don't have a way of verifying what you're saying there about where the money goes. I just want to make that clear. Do you understand, though, the concerns that are being expressed to Israel from its friends about the scale of Israel's response in Gaza?
No, absolutely not. And I tell you why, because people always say we want a proportion. You need to respond proportionately. And I say personally, heaven forbid that we would respond proportionately, because that would mean we would have to behead exact same amount of babies. We would have to rape the exact same amount of women. We would have to burn the exact same amount of Palestinian families sitting peacefully in their homes. We do not want a proportionate response. We need a disproportionate response. And therefore, Israel is targeting the northern part of Gaza at the moment. We have attack bomb buildings. We've distributed leaflets in Arabic saying go south. We've extended our deadline from, it's 10 days since we gave the warning. People are having plenty of time to cross those few miles into the south. And it's very interesting. It's only recently that Egypt even bothered to open the borders to humanitarian aid. One more thing, Brent, we have a humanitarian crisis here. We have over 100,000 people who have had to leave their homes from the north and the south. They're living in hotels. They're living in my backyard. They're living everywhere. No one's talking about the humanitarian aid corridor that's coming to Israel. Let's keep it on proportion. Let's keep it targeted. Who started this with their savagery?
So what do you say then to the words from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken? He visited Israel immediately after these attacks. And he said that the Middle East has a choice, the hate, the nihilism offered by Hamas, or the people working together for peace and stability. Is that, I mean, I can sense the anger that you're carrying right now. I mean, is even thinking about peace right now, is that possible?
No, absolutely not. And people say, oh, the innocent Gazan civilians. Of course there are innocent civilians. But we see footage now of hundreds of innocent civilians who followed these savages into our kibbutzes, looting dead bodies. We hear mobile phone calls recorded by these terrorists calling their families from Jewish phones, and the parents are egging them on. One savage is saying, oh, I murdered 10 people with my own hands. And the mum and dad, the innocent civilians, are saying, yay. And also, I got to remind you, of course, there are innocent civilians, but let's not forget the thousands of innocent Gazan civilians who threw street parties on 9/11. These same thousands of innocent Gazan civilians who dish out candy every time a Jewish person is murdered. I have Palestinian friends. I have a friend or two in Gaza, right? They've done nothing wrong. My heart breaks for them. It really does. But my heart breaks for my own people. And you're talking about, innocent civilians. These people are getting a carte blanche for also allowing, squandering the hundreds of thousands of humanitarian aid that Israel has been given to Gaza for the last decade or so.
Let me ask you
it's like the narrative. These people never did anything wrong. Of course there can't be peace with Hamas. And these people voted Hamas in, by the way. Well,
before we run out of time, let me just ask you then, what has to happen for peace to be achieved, in your opinion? I mean, I know you agree with what you're hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu, that Hamas has to be destroyed. But do you think that's the only thing that has to happen before you can have peace with the Palestinians?
It's a very good question. Listen, after the attack a few years ago, I contacted a young Palestinian man and I said, let's make the world a better place. What do you want to do? And we talked and we set up a little after-school club in a refugee camp, teaching Palestinian children English and computer skills so they could better their lives. Now, of course, he can never say that because his own people would murder him for having normalizations with a Jew. All right. So what needs to happen? First of all, regarding Europe and America, you need to completely withdraw any funding to the Palestinian Authority because they are stealing money from their own people. The squander and poverty you see in Gaza is because their own people, their own leadership have stolen that. Get rid of that leadership. Let's look for fresh leadership. All right. And let's not be all kind of, how do you say, starry eye and rainbow, that all we need is flowers and unicorns. These people, a lot of these people have been fed hatred in United Nations UNRWA schools in Gaza, where the UNRWA curriculum specifically teaches young Palestinian children to hate Jews. And I believe there should be an international inquiry to the likes of UNRWA, and certainly now in the United Nations following this outrageous justification of the slaughter of my people. The problem is not with Israel. The problem is with these big organizations and the money that is streaming into the Palestinian and the Palestinian Authority.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Tal Hattouf, we appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your passion with our viewers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. We're hurting over here. Thank you for supporting Israel.